Welcome to working with Adobe Animate. We're just going to make a quick HTML5 web page. Now this web page is interactive. Some animation and starting and stopping. And we're just going to use basically simple JavaScript file and HTML5 to put this together. By the way, it's also responsive. There we go. So we can respond and scale it to whatever size. So animation, stop and start, and a web page. Let's just go and have a quick look at this. We're going to use Animate, Adobe Animate, of course, as I mentioned. Right down the bottom, if I just scale this through, we can see a shape and animation. Now, this can be very complicated animation you want to put together. We're just going to stay really simple for this whole process, just getting it worked so you can actually go a little bit more fun with it and more complicated based on the simple formula. Now, I've also got buttons. Here's a button here. Here's another button. They've got basically instant names. And at the top here, if I go and click on my action, I've got an actions layer. Come down and have a look at not assets, but actions. And there it is. And here we are, just the actions on that page, just telling things to start and stop. Very, very simple. And we're going to use the wizard to do that. Now, I'll just close that. And let's see when we want to go through and publish that. Just go to Publish Settings. And we're going to have just center stage. This is making it responsive. And just the JavaScript HTML5 page. Don't want any of these clicked, of course. And we just click on Publish when we're ready to go. And just have a look and see what that's going to look like. Basically, these two files up here. So here we are. I'll just double click on that. We've got our page with our stop and start buttons. And of course, just over here, we've got our JavaScript. So let's get along and get this together. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go to a new file in Animate, Adobe Animate, and just go new. And now, as it loads up, we've got a whole lot of options for character animation, social game, etc., even web. And web's, of course, a great one to be on with. But I'm going to just stay with education, and I just want to stay with the size I'm working with. What I do want is I do want it HTML5. Now we can have units if we want to work with different user units, etc. Now it does depend on the outputs and what we're doing to sort of control some of the settings here. So I just want to stay with my education, and I don't really want to change too much. So I'm just going to go create just to get the right size for this demonstration. Okay, now I've got my timeline here. We can change this at any stage, but I just want this to fit. And I'm going to do 30 frames per second, as I mentioned. So I just want to keep it nice and simple like this. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically make sure that it's HTML5 canvas, which is great. Or here it is over the side. And I've left the other file. We could have multiple files open. But I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to save this just to begin with. So I think I'll call it BTN Animate. Now, naming convention for buttons is just BTN, and we're going to be made aware of that as we go through with this as well. So I'm just going to save this now into the folder to keep everything in the same place, of course, but I'm just going to use and create my own assets on the fly. So the first thing that I want to do is I've got a keyframe by default. I'm going to call this base layer. Actually, just base will do for what I'm doing. And what I want to do is I just want to put something on the page here. So I'm going to have a start and finish, and then I'm sort of just going to do some tween animation between it. So a good way of doing that is I'm just going to stay with a simple shape here. And when I clicked on this, this is our properties, so we can play with the colors and the style, etc. But what I want to do is I'm not going to have a stroke. So just out of view here, I could click on no stroke. I just want this fill, and I'm just going to put it right in the center here. I think I'll do it something just like this, just so we can get a shape to play with. And then I'm going to come through and I'm going to go all the way through, and I'm going to right click or click on this. Right clicking is good, control click. Otherwise I can just go through and I can insert a keyframe. Now, just along here, you see we've also got things like keyframes where we can put things in as well. So if I was just coming over here, this is an empty frame, this is a keyframe. So whatever is easy to do, so I'll just click like that to get it going, etc. So what I want to do is I want to do some tween animation in the middle. I've got 2 keyframes here, so I'm going to tween it. I'm going to do shape tweening. So just to get this going, I'm going to just now control click, or I can click here and I can go just insert, and what I want to do is going to be shape tween. So I'm going to click shape tween in the middle. I quite like just control clicking or right clicking in here to make it easy, but as you can see, you can use all of these things to do it as well. So I need a new keyframe, and sometimes just an easy way of doing a keyframe is we can insert a keyframe like above, or even if you just can move your file when it's right on there, and if it moves, it's not going to, so I'll click a keyframe, just establish it, and now I can move it. But usually if you can move things on stage, I'll just make a keyframe for you. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and change my color, and I'm just going to get a different color. I think I'll go to nice yellow here. In fact, I'm just going to delete that off altogether. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to create another shape. And just under here, if I hold that down, we can create, let's see, I'll just go to a nice simple oval shape. And I'll just make sure I'm on that keyframe, and I'm just going to let it go. And now you can see we're doing some shape changes. Okay. Now, one thing with this too, we can control our shapes a little bit more than just what's going to happen by using shape hints. So to do a shape hint, just to show you how this works, I just need to click on the first frame, and then just under modify, just at the top here, we go shape, and we can add a shape hint. Now I'm saying really simple, but you can do quite complex things with this, and you'll see what I mean. Add a shape hint, and we get this little A. I'm going to take it to this corner, and I'm going to take it to the next frame, and I'm going to take it over to this corner. Wherever I grab it to is going to change it significantly. Now, I don't really like what's happening with that, so let's move it over to this side. And so now when we take it through there, it's still going a bit crazy. So I might just take it into the center and see what's going to do. And there it's doing a better job. So wherever we drag it, you see we can get different things. We really didn't need a shape hint for this. Now, when we want to do the shape hint to this other side, I'm not going to do that, but we need to click on that keyframe and do the process again, and then finish it off on the next keyframe. So it goes one keyframe to the other. So essentially, there's our nice little animation all set to go, and it can be looping as well. This, I want to loop it because it starts where it finishes. So that's something to consider when you're putting this together. Okay, so let's go and create some buttons. So let's go to our layers here. I'm going to click a new layer down here, and that's what I'm going to call it. Say button 1, BTN, just to make it nice and easy to remember. In fact, I might even just make it the full button, just so it's really clear, so we don't get any differences in naming. It doesn't matter what you name these, but I'm just going to call it button 1, just so we don't get confused with different names. So there's button 1, and I'll just go return, and here it is. Now, all I want is one graphic on this page. So let's see. I'm just going to create simple buttons. Could be quite complicated buttons. Whatever you want to do is fine. But just for the purpose of this, as I mentioned, make it nice and simple. So I've just made a graphic on the page here. So there it is. It's just a graphic. You can see it's a graphic when you click on it like so. Just like the same as this one. It sort of can be... actually, you can go and get the eraser tool and you click through it and do all sorts of things. I don't want to do that because it's going to create hassles. I just want to create this as a simple button. Now, to have that button working, we need to have it as a symbol. So how do we do a symbol? Well, a good way of creating a symbol is basically just going through here, and we can go to modify, and we can come down and we go convert to symbol. So there you go. There's a symbol. And seeing we're working with buttons, that would be a great idea to do one. Now we have movie clips, buttons, and graphics. These are all different symbols. Movie clips want to get really complicated and action script and all sorts of things on there. Animation within animation, all sorts of things that get quite deep. That's a good way to do it. But we just want to work simply just for the week. For this first version, I'm going to keep it really simple. So button. So with a button, it's going to create a state timeline as well. So see what will happen there. So now let's get to our naming convention, BTN, and I'm just going to call this _1, just to keep it separate from the layer name. And I'm just leaving the registration in the center, and I'm just going to go, okay, don't need any of these other things. And there you go. It's now a button. Now, we can see it's a button. It's now come up here, but we want to give it an actual instance name. So I'm going to call this BTN. In fact, actually, I'll go make it really clear. BUTTON. I'm going to call it state 1, just so it's different from all the other names, so it keeps it nice and clear to work with. And I'll just hit the return key. And okay, so what it's done is it's gone through and it hasn't actually accepted that name. So I click on that. Why? Well, actually it likes underscores. So let's just go, and as you see, that's an underscore there. I'm just in the habit of doing that, but BTN, actually no, we're going to name it BUTTON underscore state underscore 1. Let's see how that goes. And I'll click return. Now I like that a lot better. So just be aware of that. So it's an instant name and it's a button, but the button itself it's an instance of BTN. Okay, so that's the first one, and that's button 1. Let's just keep it really clear, and I'm going to do something else for a different button, and I'm going to create a new layer. And just to practice, I'm going to do the same thing again. So this one I'll call it BTON underscore 2. Return key, and let's go and do something totally different for this one, and I'll just make it a nice little rectangle. And there it is, outside a little bit, so that's great. Okay, so there's my graphic. I'm going to now do the same thing as well. So just back under here, so modify, convert to symbol, BTN 2 for this one. It's a button, and I'll go OK. And now we're going to do a state of it. So I'm going to call it BUTTON underscore, remember, state and underscore 2. And then I'll just go return. So very simple graphics and everything like that. Now let's have a look. These are stored in the library. So over here we've got 1 and we've got 2. Just to see they're completely different. Now I'm going to just go into the library, and I can actually double click on like so, and it's into that library state. I can also work on the timeline and see these different states as well. But you see what's happening in the timeline? This is a button. It's got hits and down states and overs and whatever. I'm just going to come back to here. I can also double click here, and it's still gone into the state here, but we can still see the whole timeline. So it can be an advantage whether you want to work directly from the library or just on the actual timeline visible itself, but it's actually gone nested into it. Okay. So what I also want is I'm going to now do for an overstate. This time I'm going to use my control or right click, and then I can just go insert keyframe, or I could have used it here. And within this frame, I'm just going to go and change the color. So let's go back to properties with it clicked on like so, and properties, objects, there you go. So just go around, and you can also actually play around with converting things from here as well, but keep it nice and simple, and you'll find the best ways for you to work. So if I click on this one, I'm going to come and make it red. And so there's state 1, there's state 2. So let's go back to the timeline. So we've got some effects for a rollover now. So if I come back to here, and I can, with my pointer tool, and click on this one now, double click, and I'll also do the same thing here. So let's see, new keyframe from here this time. And I'm going to go back to my properties, my object, and I'm going to go through and do another state for the button. I think I'll do this darker color. It's something just a bit different. And there you go. That one's set like so. So we've got our button states, and I'll come right back to the timeline by just clicking on the arrow there, and we're back in here. So here's all our setup. So I'm just going to make sure, of course, I save that now. And we want to keep saving it at a regular basis. So the next thing, we need to just put the information for a label for a frame and our actions. Okay, so we've basically got our animation and our buttons all sorted. As simple as they may be, it could be very complicated or simple, just the process is the same. So let's go through and create our final layer, which is going to contain a frame label and actions. So here it is, got my next layer. Now, of course, we can move those anywhere we want, but we want this at the top, and we want to call this actions. Here we go. Now, we've got a keyframe here. We're going to need a keyframe at the end as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come all the way through and just with it selected there, just go and insert a keyframe, not a blank frame, but a keyframe, because that's going to hold our label and also determine where our actions are going to send things. So let's see, speaking of actions, on a frame here, the last frame, I just want to call this end. Could be called anything you like, but keep it simple. And there it is. It's labeled. I'm going to come back to the beginning. And let's see, end, well, start would be a great way to call the first one. I'm just going to leave the others blank. Just want to keep this nice and clear. So we've got 2 keyframes and we have a start and an end. So let me see. Let's click on this first frame here. And I'm going to come up now and start playing around with my actions. So we can go up under the window, and here's actions, or F9. And we're essentially going to do code snippets anyway, but we're going to use the action panel to do that. So because we're determining all the actions from that key frame on the first frame of the timeline, we can control everything from that. It's a great way to do it. In the past, you used to have actions on elements. It was very confusing. This is a lot easier. So let me see. What do we want to do? We want to determine, we don't want to go to a web page. And if you can scroll down here, we can just say where we want to go from that start. Well, actually what we want to do is essentially, we really want to just play it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on play. So here's the play, this timeline, which is what we want. So I can click on that and I'm going to go next. So play with what? Well, what I want to do is on double click, we could do that. On mouse click, well, I just want to do on a mouse click, not the over, but it's up to you what you want to do. So on mouse click, so I'm going to click that. And which button do I want? Well, I'm going to have my start button, and it's the actual instant name there. And I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go finish and add. And there you go. We've written some code. So I'm going to click down the bottom here because that's only for one button. We want to play from that one button. The other button we want to stop. So let's see. Let's go through and do that. So I'll click on my add using the wizard again. And I'm going to go through here and go to and play, or go to and stop. Okay. But this time I'm actually going to use the label here. So I just didn't use the label in the first one because I was thinking, well, I might just play it from anywhere instead of from the label. But we can go and change that if we wanted to. So I'm going to go and stop on a particular frame label. So this timeline. Now, what is the name of that stop? Well, I'm going to call it end. And of course, I'm writing it in caps as well. So I'll go next and on mouse click. Yeah, I'll go and stay on my mouse click with this one. So on mouse click, and I'm going to call this my second state, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to finish that. And so here's the code. Now, this one, as you see, this go to and stop, I could have changed that to this go to and play, and I could even copy that text and put it in there, and then I'd put my start. But I'm going to try this with just to play. Basically, it should play from anywhere, and that might be better. But we can go to labels, we can go to frames, but you can see the idea of how they all work, especially if you're doing some sort of game. Okay, so I think we've got things together okay. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to save this one now. And of course, now I want to go and test it out. So as a web page, so I'm going to go and publish it. So publish settings. And so what we need, by the way, just before I do that, if you don't have it for the web, you come down and you will be able to convert it to the web. We're already in that web page format, so we're good to go. So let's just go through to publish settings. Now, I don't actually want any of those. I'm not using any sound or anything. I'm just going to leave these as the same. Now, with that simple graphic, it'll just draw it. But if you work with more complicated images, you're going to get an images folder as well. But just for now, I think we're all good to go. And all I need to do is I need to publish it. So if I go publish, it's going to go through and it's publishing that. And I'm just going to go OK just to save it as those settings. Frame number in easel J start 0 instead of 1. Or anyway, let's go and see if there's any issue with that. And it's recommending something there. So I'm just going to go through it and I'm going to go to my web page and I'll just close those actions for the time being. So the one we published is this set that's just over here. So let's just go and see how that works. Okay. So there is my file. So if I click on that, it's playing. That one stops. That plays. So if I stop there, it'll go to the frame, and this one will just start it. So I could start from the frame, as I mentioned, but it was simple as that. Now hold it. There's something a bit strange here. It's not scaling. Okay. Now that might be an issue. Not really. Let's just go through, and I'm just going to close that for the time being. And I'm just going to come back to my Animate settings here. And I'm just going to bring this back to the file here. Whoops, it's gone to Code View and I'm in Dreamweaver. Well, I certainly don't want to do that. So let's just go back to our Animate button here, which should be in the button Animate. Here it is. And we're just going to set our publish settings once more. What didn't I do before? I didn't center it or make it responsive. So let's try it once more and we'll publish it. And I'll just go OK. And I'm just going to come back down here. We should still see the same things that just redone. Load that up. And look at that. It's animating nicely. Start, stop. I stop it anywhere and it just plays. So very simple. We could actually go to web page or do anything we want with it. So essentially that's all it is putting this together. Now you notice before I was open in Dreamweaver, we can open this file into Dreamweaver. We can put different backgrounds on it, add all sorts of elements. We might have done a heading with this or an animation, but intermixing HTML5 with Dreamweaver and web and Animate, you can do some crazy stuff with it. Anyway, thanks for watching.